Hi, everybody. So we are here for the last of our movie, at least until they make a new one, our movie Star Trek podcast discussions that we've been doing. And today we were going to talk about Galaxy Quest. And my friend Tom is here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Gunn. I'm a Star Trek fan.
Yes. So this one's going to be really fun. This is the first comedy that I've ever really done one of these kind of podcasts for, so it's going to be an interesting. I'm kind of excited. It'll be a new experience, and I do have the chat room open on the YouTube page, so if anybody joins in, feel free to make a comment on the chat room. So yes, let me get open to our Okay, so I always like to read a little summary. This one's pretty short because it's pretty simple. So Galaxy Quest. Galaxy Quest begins with a crew for a Star Trek-like show at a convention signing autographs. They are kind of has-beens that have been off the air for some time and make their living at these events. This is particularly annoying for trained actor Alexander Dane. Unbeknownst to them, an alien race called the Thermians has been watching the show and thinks they are true space warriors. They first abduct Captain Nesmith and then the entire crew to help them face off against the evil Ceres, who wants to destroy the Thermians. The Galaxy Quest crew end up relying on Brandon, a fan of their show, to help them navigate the ship and escape and defeat Ceres. By the end, the Thermians are saved, and the crew realizes what they do matters to people, and that they are actually good at it. A new version of the series is then revived. So,
you sort of breezed through a lot of the plot points, but that's okay. I think you got the essence of it.
Yeah, that's kind of I'm just trying to keep it simple this time, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so. Let's, I guess, talk about our experience. So this, I actually had seen, it's sort of weird. I'd only seen the, I think this is the first Star Trek thing I ever saw, which is funny. And then I'd seen the 2009 reboot. So those were, before we started this podcast, I had only seen those two things, which is weird. And I still thought it was very, very funny because to me, what's great about this movie is that it's really just kind of poking fun at fandoms in general. Like, I think you could laugh at this. I have laughed at this being a Disney fan or being a Star Wars fan, or it's not necessarily too inside the NFL kind of thing, like to get the jokes. And so I really have a fondness for this, especially with Alan Rickman's passing. I've watched it a couple times since then, and I think it's very funny. I do. I think it's very funny, and I enjoyed rewatching it for this podcast.
Yeah. My experience with it was I saw it when it came out in the late '90s, and it was sort of quaint thinking about it because in those days, you would walk into a movie really knowing almost nothing about it. You'd maybe have seen a poster, maybe a trailer, if you happened to have caught it at the theater. YouTube wasn't a thing. So I kind of went into it not knowing what I was sitting down for, a space adventure of some kind that was funny. That's all I could guess from the title and the poster.
So you didn't know necessarily that it was a parody?
No, I had no idea that they were going to be riffing on Star Trek, but it became pretty clear pretty early on. And the way that I think I remember getting a little nervous at first because the acting was so cheesy in that first clip of the Galaxy Quest show that they give you that I was a little worried that it was going to be mean.
Yeah.
But it doesn't turn out to be mean at all, and we'll get into that. But
that's what I wondered, if as a Star Trek fan, if anything touched any nerves, I guess.
Yes. Yes, and sort of a I don't know, bemused kind of way, but also in a very positive way too.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, so this was actually, I think, written by fans. I think this was the writer. I think it was his first ever script. It was just basically a spec script that he had done,
Wow.
and he hit it out of the park for a spec script. For it to be your first one is pretty successful, pretty
Hmm.
good. And I think it kind of has that feel of, compared to, if you look at it compared to Spaceballs, which was a Mel Brooks kind of slick. He knew what he was doing at that point. You
Uh-huh.
know, it's just, I don't know, just feels sort of more. It feels a little bit smaller and a little bit. Um, I don't know. Just you can just tell that they love it a little bit more, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
there's a lot of love in the script. And I think not just for Star Trek, but for science fiction, for fandom, for pop culture in general.
Hmm.
Getting excited about pop culture, and I think that warmth is one of the things that makes this so hold up so well after more than 20 years now.
Hmm. Yeah, it's David Howard is the name of the screenwriter. So it's pretty interesting. Have you ever been to a convention or to a Comic Con or that kind of thing?
I've actually never been to a Star Trek convention, um, like a proper Star Trek convention. I've been to, and even at that, I've been to comic conventions, to the Jet City Comic Show here in Tacoma, Washington, a couple of times, and I've enjoyed that. And that's been a good, very light. It's a very light kind of convention experience. You see some cool costumes. It is very comics focused,
Hmm.
and it's not so much just pop culture generally, but you have people, local authors, hawking their books and their sci-fi and fantasy books. A lot of artists selling, their bookmarks and their prints and stuff to put on your wall, and cool fan art and stuff. And I enjoy that. I have had kind of a love-hate relationship with the Star Trek fan community in general.
Interesting.
And lately I've been kind of more towards the, maybe not hate, but just suspicious. Um,
Because of their reaction to the reboot?
yeah, mainly. And the closed-mindedness that I've seen among a lot of fans, just totally betraying the spirit of the thing that they love in saying, no, my way is the right way and yours is not.
Yeah.
It's completely antithetical to everything Star Trek is about. Um, there's no, with many fans, they seem to have a blind spot in themselves for, well, no, my way's the
Yeah.
right way and yours isn't. Instead of being open to how other fans experience this thing, they've gotten very dogmatic about it, and
Yeah,
I think
it's
that's too
really
bad.
hard. I mean, we've talked about this many times that, I've really been struggling with this whole Beauty and the Beast remake,
Hmm.
because I love that movie. And when they do Little Mermaid, I'm just going to have to, like, have blinders on because it's going to be really hard for me. And so
Hmm.
I can kind of sympathize. And I just kind of have decided, I put on Twitter the other day, I'm like, if I don't come out and say I like it, just assume I hate it. So that I'm
Right.
divorcing myself from that conversation, and I'm just going to see the movie and see if I like it. But because I just am determined, I'm not going to be that kind of person that spoils
Yeah.
the fun for everybody else. Because if somebody asks me, I have to be honest and say I hate it.
Yeah.
I've hated everything I've seen from it except for the casting.
I think the most
But
respectful way to put it is it's not for me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I guess DC is doing an animated an animated movie that's based on the '60s Batman TV show, which
right,
I despise. But my general response to people who are excited about it is, okay, have fun with that. It's not for me,
right. Yeah, and
because it
it could,
wasn't. So
yeah, and it could be a really good movie. But if you're asking me to judge on this picture of Lumiere Cogsworth, like I don't have any more context to go off of
no,
and than
that's
this
true. Yeah.
picture and or this quote from the director that really turned me off or whatever. And so I'm just anyway. I kind of, so I can understand how those fans are
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
because it's something that you love, but you just have to try to not be a jerk about it.
Yeah, the phrase, the analogy I heard that I love is, okay, don't like it, but you have no right to go and knock the ice cream out of everybody else's hands while
Right.
they get excited for it, you know.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So it's an interesting experience
Yeah.
being a fan sometimes,
Mhm.
because yeah, I just think it's hard when you see something that you love and you feel like it's not necessarily being sort of respected the way that you want it to be, then your immediate reaction is like, ah, but you
Yeah.
just have to, you just can't, it's just not worth it. It's not worth, especially in my case, like this far out, like, and it's not like there's anything I can do to make it better. So it's
Uh-huh.
just sort of making life miserable for myself.
Right, and for no
Anyway,
good reason. Yeah,
you just have to let it go, like Elsa
sure.
says. Just
Yep.
have to let it go. Okay, so interesting stuff. I have been, as far as me, I have been to Comic Con twice, and I've been to the Fan Expo. Just basically, I don't even know the difference, but anyway, I've been to that once. I've been to Comic Con twice, and man, I should have gone this year because Mark Hamill and William Shatner were there this year,
Ooh, ooh, good
which
one.
was it was stupid, but I was just exhausted and I
That may
needed a
never
break.
happen again.
I
Shatner's pretty
know,
old.
I know. But anyway, so I did watch Mark Hamill's speech on YouTube, and that was pretty awesome. So then I was like, I'm such an idiot. But anyway, so I have been, and it is fun, but it's also exhausting. I guess that's why I was hesitant, because it's
Uh-huh.
just like I met Carrie Fisher
Neat.
at Comic Con. I got her autograph, but you have to wait in this super long line, and it's really expensive, and I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's just interesting when you watch it on here, like they're getting sick of it. I'm sure it's from the other side. It's also kind of exhausting too. Like it's exhausting for the fans. You finally get up there. It's your chance, to like see them. And I'm sure to them, they're like, oh, another, stupid fan. Uh, so,
Well, and they've shelled out and paid, and they paid and paid and paid to get to that spot, and
yeah,
there's I'm sure there's a strong sense of entitlement.
yeah,
Um, and also, I'm sure there's I haven't been to one of these conventions where there's tons of Star Trek actors there. In fact, I haven't been to any where there are any Star Trek actors. But from what I've heard, from what I hear from other fans is, and from what I've observed, like watching videos of them at the conventions and stuff, is that you just have to know that when you encounter these people, that they are just that, they're people.
yeah.
You may be there to see Jadzia Dax or Spock or or Dr. Bashir, but you're not going to find them there. You're going to find Terry Farrell and Alexander Siddig and Leonard Nimoy or Zachary Quinto.
Right.
These are human beings. They have their own lives and opinions, and they're not coming in costume. That's something I noticed about Galaxy Quest is that the ways in which it is very like Star Trek fandom, and the ways it very much is not.
Mm,
Um,
interesting.
the actors do not appear in costume, and but I do get the sense sometimes that they are weary of, and also too, like Jason Nesbitt, Tim Allen's character, he knows the
Uh-huh.
show. Jason Nesbitt is what every fan wishes William Shatner was. But William
Hmm.
Shatner is very unapologetic about not knowing every bit and bob of every episode. And
That's
I love
interesting.
that he doesn't apologize for it. He's very cheerful and he's very gracious about acknowledging the fans' enthusiasm. But he's honest about not totally sharing it in the same way that they do.
Yeah. In some ways, I feel like it's sort of a I don't know, just like a powder keg of it, like. So I ended up paying $100 to get my photo with Carrie Fisher because it was my birthday, and anyway, and you know you pay a lot of money, and I ended up waiting for over an hour, and that's hard for me. My feet were really sore, and then once we got in there, you had to like sit on the ground with her dog, because she doesn't go anywhere without her dog.
Mm-hmm.
And and then you're just in and out in half a second. So I just feel like it's sort of like unpleasant for it's supposed to be this like really cool moment, but in reality it's kind of like, oh. And I mean, I much preferred at I got a picture with Ralph Macchio, from the Karate Kid.
Yeah.
That was just at like a booth and I think I paid $15-$20, and I got to actually talk to him, and I was like, I'm never doing the keynotes again because it was just a pain in the neck. And so anyway, I think that sometimes the fans are grumpy for a reason, and I think that, I don't know, it's just sort of a weird situation. But yeah, I definitely think you can kind of feel like, you can almost feel resentful that, like, don't you like us fans? Why are you charging $100? Why are you doing this kind of a thing when they don't realize
that's not the actors, it's the event organizers, and it's the event organizers taking advantage of both the fans and the actors.
Well, and it's not like someone like Ralph Macchio has like tons of acting gigs. Like, this is something he uses to like live off of. He had to fly there. He has to pay for a hotel. Like, I mean, there's things that go into the expense of being there. Yeah. So people have to kind of recognize that too. It's not like you're just seeing them maybe out at some, I don't know, restaurant or something. You're like, hey, can I have a selfie
bugging them.
Like
that. No, they're there to see and be seen. Yeah.
Yeah. If you were like, I don't know, getting a photo with Taylor Swift or something like that would be one thing. But like, if it's an official event where they've scheduled time. Anyway, but I guess I've been on the side of the slightly resentful fan.
Yeah.
And I've been and they're just, that's why I decided not to go this year, because I'm just like, it's just going to be so crowded. It's going to be so, and, but anyway, so it's interesting how they kind of show it here, I didn't know that they didn't ever wear their costumes. Is that like a rule that Star Trek has, or?
No, I think it's something the fans are just more comfortable with because they don't want to come out in character. That I think if they have a sense of showmanship, and a sense of wanting to honor their craft. I think they know that they can't. I think I think of an example, not to pick on anybody, but for instance, I think John Cho. I think he knows he can't come out and be Sulu because he's not a writer; he's an actor. He can't come up with the stuff Sulu would say on the spot. He probably doesn't have it together that much, right? As far as who the character is, and I think he'd prefer to just go out as himself and meet the fans as himself. Yeah. However, there are some actors who do, because they're maybe not as prominent and they're not as active as actors in trying to maintain a public persona. So the ladies who played Lursa and Betor in Star Trek Generations and in the Next Generation series, the Duras sisters, right?
I remember you mentioning them.
Yeah, they come out in costume, in character.
That's really cool.
And not just them, a few others too. But they're side characters, and I don't imagine they do it for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Right.
Because I can imagine that would be very exhausting.
Sure, that makes sense.
But, I think what the fans really want is a theme park experience where they get to meet the characters, even if it's not the original actor. I think they want a Disneyland experience where they get to meet Worf, but it's not Michael Dorn, They want to meet the character.
That makes sense. Okay, so I guess we could get started in the actual movie. So in this movie, of course, it starts out with them at this convention. The show has been off the air for some time, and you have, the fans, they're getting this like great introduction, and you have the actors in the dressing room getting ready, and my my favorite of all is Alan Rickman. He's so hilarious as Alexander Dane. He's like, I played Richard the Third five times. I got 5 curtain calls or whatever.
Yeah.
For Richard the Third.
Yeah. I think he's riffing. They're riffing a little bit there on Patrick Stewart being a Shakespearean.
That's what I wondered.
Yeah. That's what I gathered from it.
I wouldn't be surprised if maybe I wondered if it was a little Nimoy too, but I don't know. But yeah, definitely Picard
Yeah, I
for
don't know
sure.
so much. I don't think Nimoy had as well. Well, through the '70s, there was a perception that Leonard Nimoy sort of resented being Spock, and so I
Yeah.
think they're kind of playing off that. There, he very foolishly published a book, or a book. Published a book that was foolishly entitled "I Am Not Spock," and he was advised not to do that, and ignored the advice and did it anyway, and got a lot of fan backlash. Um, but he did not mean to say, "Oh, I wish I wasn't Spock," or "I hate Spock." He didn't say that. He's just trying to say, "I'm a person. I'm not this
Right.
character I play." But it wasn't taken very well, right? So um, I think that, yeah, there's just sort of a sense that maybe Leonard Nimoy resented it after a while, but that he warmed up to the character once he found out that he could kill off the character in the movies and then direct, and then he was on board, right?
That's interesting. Yeah, you kind of figured there must have been sort of especially I would think in the I don't know, in certain episodes, it feels like these are people that were trying to be like actors, like they're not. This is not something that's like campy and fun, like in that same kind of way. Like I
Mm-hmm.
could picture them backstage being like, I'm an actor, kind of a
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah, well, and actually, what I kept thinking about was, I think I've mentioned this before. Shatner had a really fascinating conversation with Patrick Stewart in his documentary, The Captains.
oh
And I
yeah,
believe it was The Captain's Close Up, where he has this conversation with Patrick Stewart, where Shatner kind of expresses some dismay at being made fun of for being Captain Kirk. Where he has people yell at him on the street, "Live long and prosper, beam me up, Scotty," and like he has a sense of like being made fun of.
oh right.
And kind of like Jason Nesbitt in the toilet, and he hears those teenagers coming in and out laughing at the whole affair, and how silly it all is, and then suddenly he's ashamed, and suddenly he's not having fun, he's not in it anymore, he's suddenly ashamed.
We
And
definitely see that with Alexander Dane, also with the Granthar's hammer,
yeah, by Grapthar's hammer, yeah.
Grapthar's. That must have been like "Live long, I prosper." I'm guessing.
Yeah, that's definitely what they're going for. Yeah, the line, the catchphrase, yeah, that everybody wants to hear. But Patrick Stewart is great. Shatner tells him this, and he says, "Do you know what you're saying, though? Look at you. You played one of the most memorable characters ever." He's like, "No one is going to, in 50 years, is going to remember my performance of Hamlet at this and that theater in London. No one's going to remember it. But in 50 years, people will know that you were the original Captain Kirk." And that moves millions of people. He's like, "You should be proud of that. You should own that. You should." And Shatner kind of has this moment where he goes, "You're right. You're absolutely right." And I
That's
love that
cool.
it's,
I want to watch that.
oh yeah, it's a great interview. And actually, all the interviews are really fun to watch.
Where's that
Um,
again?
let's see. It's been on and off Netflix. It was originally produced by Epix, and I know you can buy it on YouTube. So it's out there. You may need to buy it. It may not be free to stream at any given time, but
Huh.
I'm confident Amazon has it. But it's worth it. It's worth whatever price you pay to see it, because it's really warm and interesting and human kind of conversations he
Yeah.
has with these people.
That's
Um,
really interesting because I mean, you just look at now our
yeah.
50th anniversary of Star
Yes.
Trek going on right now, and it's I'm so glad that I just randomly thought to watch these movies like and do this series because I don't know, it's just giving me a whole new appreciation that I would not have at all if I hadn't, with this whole 50th.
Yeah.
You look at something that I think what's impressive about Star Trek is just how many different because I've heard a lot of people, like even just this week somebody said to me like, I don't like space stuff.
Right.
Which I'm like, to me, that's like saying I don't like black and white. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's, I mean, because you just look at the difference between all these different Star Trek movies. Like, even though it's the same franchise, they're so different, and it just, you could watch. And I haven't even seen. I've only seen like 3 of the episodes, but there are funny things. There are tense things. There are, I can't think of very many franchises where there is so much. It's so rich and so deep.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes people focus on, when they're kind of making fun of it, they focus on the not so deep parts, the fun
Well,
parts,
yeah, I
the
think
silly parts.
I think what this work how this movie works so well on so many levels, and one of those levels is that this is the kind of movie that should be bad. Galaxy Quest is the kind of movie that should be a dumb throwaway parody of Star Trek.
Right.
But it holds up so well on its own. It should be stupid, but it's not. Star Trek, I think, is very similar. It was a science fiction show made in the 60s, which every other sci-fi show made in the 60s is silly, right? Or everything that had been made to that point just about had been silly. And I think people expected Star Trek to be silly and to descend into silliness, which I admit that occasionally it flirts with it, at least the original series. But it's something that shouldn't be taken seriously, but it is.
Yeah.
It was canceled, for heaven's sake, but here we are talking about it.
Yeah, it's true. It's really true. Okay, so yeah, I just love, I don't know, anytime, like I said, anytime Alan Rickman, rest in peace, like anytime that he's in this movie, he just, I can't think of another actor that has been a villain and could pull off being so funny in
Yeah.
another part. You know what I mean? Like,
Uh-huh.
he both as, Hans Gruber, this amazing villain, and then later as Snape.
Uh-huh.
You just think like, and as the the sheriff, like in Robin Hood, he's just, and yet he could be so funny, and
Yeah.
it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I had a real feeling this viewing of being at a family reunion where I'm like, oh, hey, that guy. And I'm so happy to see them. And Alan Rickman was definitely one of those, but also Rainn Wilson as one of the Thermians.
Oh, yeah.
Also, there's an actor, it's funny, there's an actor who plays one of the Thermians who ends up having a minor role in one of the Star Trek series.
No way,
on.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, in Enterprise. But, yeah, so that's kind of cool. But, yeah, the guy that plays Balthazar or the main Thermian they interact with.
Oh, him.
It's not
Enrico
him. It's not him who's in Enterprise. I didn't mean to create a misunderstanding. It's not him that's in Enterprise, but I recognize a lot of the talent here. Like, these people went on to do other things and had great careers after this. So
definitely. Well, you had Sam Rockwell playing the. I think his part has got to be kind of interesting. That the guy who had the one line, and he tries to kind of monopolize off that for the rest of his career. That's definitely something that's had to have happened.
Yeah, and there are actually a lot of actors like that in you'll see at conventions who the guy who was in one role once, or just had one guest role, but
it was kind of funny at the Tony Awards this last year. One of the jokes they did I thought was pretty funny is they said, they'd say so and so actor is in Matilda or whatever, and he's like, you might not recognize him, or in Hamilton, but you might recognize him from playing Dr. Sam Smith on Law and Order, and they all went through every single, like, one of them had done some part on Law and Order, and there was one guy who had been on 3 different parts.
Yeah.
And so I think it's probably kind of like that. But yeah, we can kind of go through some of the other. You've got Tony Shalhoub, who would become Monk.
Oh, I love him. Yeah, he's so good in this.
Yeah,
and the things they do with his character are so interesting too. I love that through the whole beginning of it, he doesn't even flinch. He's just, oh, this is cool. Yeah, I'm into this.
Yeah.
And I also love the contrast that he makes fun of Scotty by being the opposite of Scotty. That when he's saying the ship is breaking apart, he's like, he's instead of going, "She's gonna break up, Captain," like Scotty would be very hyperactive, and he's like, so they're telling me that it's breaking apart, and not just FYI,
Yeah, he's pretty that fan, especially when you compare him to the current Scotty, the Simon Pegg.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really funny. And we have of course Sigourney Weaver as Gwen.
Yeah, sci-fi goddess Sigourney Weaver.
Yes, incredibly tall woman, Sigourney Weaver.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's very. I forget if she's 6 foot. She's very tall. And yeah, well, we'll talk a little more about her. But Tim Allen, of course, as Jason Nesmith, and it's interesting because I don't know, like the only other part that he'd really had that's a space part would have been Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah, although actually I was thinking about how he was in the Santa Claus, and that's another situation where he's a guy who thinks something is fake and then he finds out that it's real.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah, so similar situation. And also there's a weird kind of similarity to where Buzz Lightyear thinks he's real. He thinks he's really the Space Ranger, and then he finds out he's just a toy.
Yeah.
Right, so I don't know. There's something about Tim Allen where he straddles the line between the real and the imaginary. Maybe I don't know if there's anything to that, but it just seems like that's where he's ended up.
Yeah, he has kind of an innocence, I think.
Yeah.
That really works in roles. Even on Home Improvement, I'm not like the biggest Home Improvement fan, but I think that was his appeal, was the certain sort of innocence about his character.
Oblivious, but not in a way that you sort of oblivious, but and a little bit lacking in self-awareness, but not in a way that you despise him or pity him.
Definitely. And then I guess the last person that I knew, if you got Justin Long as a teen actor who would then go on to be on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, he's me, by the way. He plays me in this movie at that age.
Yeah. So that's one thing I wondered. So what do you think? We've talked a little bit about it, but I guess do you have anything else to say about sort of what the movie has to say about fandoms? Because the movie pokes fun at them, but then it also makes them, like the Justin Long character, the real heroes of the movie.
Yeah. Well, I think actually what I think it does that, but I think it also makes Star Trek the hero of the movie. That the more what happens to these characters is that the more that they buy into the show and the ethics of the how should I put this, the philosophy of the show, or the idea that attracts fans to the show, the more they buy into that and own it, the more successful they are in defeating their enemies. Interesting.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
And the more, and their Saris, his attitude when he finds out that they're just part of a TV show, he sees nothing but a bunch of dumb actors and a dumb TV show. He sees what the cynical person who says, "Oh, I don't watch space stuff," sees. Like, oh, really? Cardboard sets and styrofoam rocks and dumb polyester uniforms, really? He doesn't take it seriously for a second. And he doesn't see any value in it, and he doesn't stop for a second to see if there is any value in it. And that's his loss. He thinks he knows it all, right? He doesn't think he has anything to learn from a dumb old TV show. And at first, neither do the actors who were in it. They're better than the show, right? They're above it. And the more they bring themselves onto the show's level and really look it in the eye, the more successful they are in what they're trying to do.
That's really true. I hadn't thought of it quite that way. I said it's kind of like saying, like, we're going to make fun of you a little bit, but we really do love you.
Yes. Sort of we're going to rub you a little. Yeah. Yeah. It kind of give you noogies there at the beginning, but it ends in a hug. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good way to say it. Yeah. So are there any other, do you think that the Sigourney Weaver character was is she just poking fun at female characters in general on these kind of shows, or was it particularly Uhura? Because it didn't seem like it really Uhura, but
Well, I
I
think
don't
she's
know.
making fun of a number of female Star Trek characters at once, but then
Okay.
also sort of commenting on the way women have been treated in sci-fi to this point. I think her character makes a general point about that women are underutilized and objectified, and they could have done more with that, but I'm not sure it was time for this conversation. Because by the end, she's still kind of objectified, and her value becomes as Jason's love interest,
Right.
and that's a little that I held my nose a little bit at that,
Well,
but she does make fun of. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say when she says, I my job is repeating what another person says. It's stupid, but I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And yeah.
I think that's kind of that aspect of her is kind of poking fun at Uhura, in that Uhura just answered the phone basically. She was never given much to do in that original series. Now they
Yeah.
kind of made up for that in I think a little bit in the animated series and in the films
In the reboot.
and the reboot. She was done a little bit more justice. Even at one point, even in the animated series, she actually got to command. But
Well, what about Voyager? Because there
no,
you have a
Voyager. No, well, Voyager
female
does
captain.
objectify. Voyager and Enterprise do objectify the women a little bit because they put them in these slinky outfits that kind of show their curves and sort of get you to stop from flipping the channels to look at the pretty girl.
Interesting. Even though she's the captain, she's still.
No, not Janeway. They don't do that with Janeway. They do that with on Voyager. They do that with 7 of 9, and they tried to do that a little bit with Kess, but not to the same effect. On Enterprise, they did that with T'Pol, where they hired a model and put her in a slinky outfit, but she's a Vulcan, but she's hot, right? And that's definitely an aspect of the character. So they're kind of making fun of that too. But also, I thought of Marina Sirtis as Counselor Troy, where she's not wearing a uniform like everybody else. Her uniform is low cut, right? And at least through most of the series, she wears this low cut outfit that isn't a uniform. It shows off her curves, and she's a pretty lady, and she doesn't have much to do week to week on the show. So
Yeah.
I thought the most of Counselor Troy watching this.
Well, and you have Savik in the early, that so you do, so you have these female characters. That's interesting. That's really, really interesting. I thought that was a hilarious line, and she's
Yeah.
good. I mean, I guess I've seen her in I think in A Fish Called Wanda. I think is the other comedy. She's in that. But yeah, she is 6 feet tall. I just looked it up. But yeah, she's good. I think she's got comedic. She doesn't take herself too seriously, which is nice, especially with the background obviously she has in sci-fi, and so I think that makes it even a little bit funnier because she's the tough girl in the Alien movies, at least.
Yep, she can do action, she can do comedy. She's just perfect for this kind of work. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so my next question is, what do you think is the funniest joke of the movie, or funniest couple jokes?
Oh, let's see. I think my favorites are all Tony Shalhoub stuff. Where he goes, I got a really interesting idea. It's not really like a laugh line per se, but like there's something about the way he delivers that.
Yeah,
like I've had
so
moments
funny.
like that where I think of something naughty that I want to do, right? And I come up with, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be fun. That had me laughing out loud. Let's see, what's another one? Oh yeah, where just as Oh, what's that actor's name who plays the kid?
Justin Long.
Justin Long. This is Justin Long is giving his speech to Jason over the communicator, saying, "Look, I know it's not a show. I get it, you know, and I live in the real world, and I understand." Um, and then Jason interrupts and says, "No, look, it's real. It's real." And he just, without blinking, goes, "I knew it. I knew it." That gets me every time.
Yeah. I mean, I think my favorite joke in the whole movie is when 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 the rock creature, that whole
Yeah.
scene I think is hilarious. When the rock creature has Jason and Alexander Dane, I looked it up because I wanted to say it right because I thought it was so funny. He says, "You're just going to have to figure out what it wants. What is its motivation?" And Jason says, "It's a rock monster. It doesn't have motivation." And then he says, "See, that's your problem, Jason. You were never serious about the craft."
Yeah.
I think that is hilarious. So yeah, that's probably my favorite. And then let's see here. What was my other? Like I said, I did think that was really funny when Gwen says, "That's my job, and I'm gonna do it. It's stupid, but I don't care." I thought Sam Rockwell is really funny. I don't have a particular quote, but just in general, like I think he's a very funny actor, and just as sort of he's this tool basically that's just trying to like play along.
Yeah, I like his panic when he realizes that episode 81 is the one where he dies, and this is the one that it's the situation that's most like. Yeah, that cracks me up.
Yeah, that is so funny.
Yeah, he made me want to watch Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Oh, what? You've got to see that. He is so funny.
Is it?
So he just real quick. He plays the president of the galaxy, and he says that his inspirations, his role models for creating the part, were Bill Clinton and Patrick Swayze. Yeah, he's really funny in that one. Funny. Yeah, you've got to see that.
I definitely will. I really like Sam Rockwell. I think he's a good actor.
Which actually, that reminds me, the creatures because the creatures in Hitchhiker's Guide are really good. The creatures in this are really good. Like I didn't check the credits, but they look like they're probably Jim Henson's Creature Shop. I'm not sure, but I
remember reading that it was. I think it was like Rick Baker, like the same people who do like Men in Black and you know some of those same teams. Because you're right, it looks so good. Like Saris looks great.
Yeah. All the creatures were amazing, and this was right at the time when they were starting to wonder if they could do characters in CG, and so this was and actually, Hitchhiker's Guide is cool for the same reason. There are a ton of really cool puppet characters that are like fully animated and guys in suits, and the suits look amazing. Really great work on that, and a lot of quality visual effects too. Like even though it's a parody, they don't hesitate to do what it takes to carry off the scene.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I mean, because this is a parody made in 1999, and I think the visual effects look better than, I forget, when was Insurrection? 99 or 98?
Actually, it was earlier. It was actually 97, 98, I want to say, right in there.
98. So I think that the special effects in this and the makeup and all of that, the production values, look better in this than in both Nemesis and Insurrection.
That's funny. Yeah.
I do. I really do.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
So, I don't know, it's just kind of funny. I did read this. This was pretty cool. That it says the rock monster is a mock tribute to William Shatner, who desperately wanted to put rock monsters in the climax of Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, but had to cut them out of his script for budgetary reasons.
Yep.
So that's interesting.
This was my first viewing having that information.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I found a lot of cool things. Like I should have taken notes, but there were hundreds of cool little parallels and reflections on Star Trek that I had never noticed until this viewing.
Hmm.
They're very like there's a lot of love in this script. Every page, every line of dialogue uh, has a tie to Star Trek somehow.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's interesting because parody is kind of a dead art. Like it's just gotten so lazy to the
sure,
point
yeah,
where most parody, I mean, I haven't watched any even for years because they just got so bad. But where it's the joke is that they're looking like whatever is popular. Like
yeah,
a lazy, the date movie and epic movie and
uh-huh.
horrible movies like that. That it's not even really a joke. It's just like we look like something so it's funny.
Uh-huh.
And actually, like this shows like you can have those things that look like or these deep cuts kind of things, or you can have all of that parody, but
Uh-huh.
you can still have like an actual good story, like to someone like me who had never seen an episode of Star Trek and good jokes. I still liked it.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's
you
it's
know
really astounding how well it stands up all by itself, even if you know nothing about the source material. It's really
mm-hmm.
brilliant in that way.
Yeah, definitely. So okay, well, see, that sort of brings up an interesting question I thought of. So let's just look at the plot with Saris. Is this a solid Star Trek-esque movie with Saris and the Thermians, or is that part of it kind of forgettable?
Well, I will say that Saris does come off like many of the Star Trek villains do in the movies. He's just sort of hell bent for the weapon, and he doesn't care about anybody, and he'll destroy whatever's in his path to get what he wants. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That rings true to the Star Trek movies. The series, less so. Although, what does ring true, I guess, is the peril of the Thermians and how it's existential, right? That they will be killed. And actually, there's really sort of a brilliant melancholy in the way that the Thermians have sort of these vacant smiles, like this, and we will be destroyed, all of us. And it's sort of like creepy in a way, the way they talk about the genocide of their people with a big smile on their face.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I thought that was kind of a brilliant device, actually, because it somehow made it even more melancholy, even more heavy.
There are portions where I think they forget about the jokes for a little too long and
Hmm.
get a little too focused on the story. But not to not it's not a huge problem. If I was going to nitpick, I guess it's
Yeah.
like we haven't had a joke in probably 10 minutes,
Hmm.
15 minutes. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think that it does feel like a solid Star Trek movie to me, at least, with I don't know, kind of like a Star Trek 3 or a
Yeah.
one of the Next Generation, or maybe one of the reboots, kind of a feel. Where like if you look at Star Trek Beyond with the reason why they're going into the I forget what it's called, um, to help save this aliens ship that's been taken,
Hmm.
and so they go to kind of rescue and help, and then there's this sort of big baddie that kind of even looks somewhat similar, actually, I
Right.
think, to
Yeah.
Saris a little bit. So yeah, I don't know, it's interesting. So let's see. Do you think that this cast has chemistry, and are there any particular relationships that stood out for you that you think they either had really good comic timing together or good chemistry in some way?
Oh, that's a good question. I thought that Tim Allen and Sigourney Weaver worked together okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it kind of they actually strike me more as friends. I was sort of I'm sort of disappointed that they have to be lovers by the end, because they strike me as just really old friends who know each other really well, and they're the opinion that one has about the other really counts. You know, actually, they kind of reminded me of they kind of reminded me of in Star Trek Tuvok and Captain Janeway, or Kirk and Spock, where as they the actors, not the characters they play on Galaxy Quest, but the actors that they are. Um,
Hmm. That makes sense.
I think they were going for like a Peter Venkman, Dana Barrett thing, but I don't think that was it. That was the wrong note.
Mm. I thought that they had pretty good chemistry just as far. It felt like a group of people that had been doing a show together to me. It felt like the
Yeah.
way that they kind of, Alexander, the way that they would kind of finish his sentence would be like, 5 curtain calls, kind of a thing. Like they knew what he was going to say. And so I thought that that worked. I think that, what did you think of Missy Pyle as Lailari and Tony Shalhoub? Do you think they had any
Oh
chemistry at
yeah,
all, or
yeah.
their romance?
Well, I mean, how much chemistry do they need to have? They just have to make funny doe eyes at each other, right?
Yeah,
They're not on that same level as Sigourney Weaver and Tim Allen as far as what their role is in the story, right? So
yeah, I guess so. That's true.
that's kind of how I see that. She's great though. I always smile when I see her in anything. I'm always happy to see her. She's another one of
Yeah.
those where I was like, oh, her, yes, I love seeing her and stuff. So
Tony Shalhoub is funny because he's like the man of a million ethnicities. Like he's played
yeah,
Italians, he's played Arabs, he's played just like all these different. It's funny.
yeah,
Um,
he's another guy. I'm always happy to see him and stuff.
yeah, me too. So okay, well, let's see. Oh, I guess we already kind of talked about, but do you have any other insight about why do you think that that most parodies are terrible, and why do you think this one worked? Why do you think it's funny?
Well, I think a parody works well when it understands its subject in a holistic kind of way. I think this parody works because it understands what makes Star Trek silly, but it doesn't stop there.
Hmm.
It also understands what makes Star Trek wonderful, and it understands why fans like it and why there's an appeal there. Um, and it acknowledges both of those sides. It doesn't just focus on the silly side. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, and
I think.
I think
Go ahead.
parodies are more successful when they actually have like a love for what it is they're parodying
Yeah,
for. When they're otherwise it just feels like a cash grab. It just feels
yeah,
like we're trying to monopolize off of what it is. We don't really love it. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the Shrek films, but I think to the limit that they work as parody is because I think that they do have a genuine love for a lot of the stuff that they're parodying
right.
in the first two, at least. The
Yeah,
third,
yeah. Early on, you definitely get the sense of an affection for Disney and the way Disney tells fairy tales, but also sort of like ribbing it a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, in an affectionate way, because we don't
definitely,
mind laughing a little bit at the stuff that we like. At least I don't.
right. Yeah, as long as it's the difference between like a airplane and then airplane two, or it's like, is that there's actual just sort of like, I don't know, it's just funny, and there's actual sort of work, I guess, in the script and making it funny and not just being sort of lazy. Uh, that makes it funny, I think. So,
Yeah, I think.
um,
Yeah,
sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, yeah, I think that another reason that it works is that it there's a message here, and it's that message is that no, entertainment isn't necessary for life, but it does make life necessary.
Hmm.
It that art and entertainment are what make it worth being alive, and you know, at the beginning, the actors are just, all they care about is the paycheck. That's all they care about. They are living surrounded by art that they've been a part of, that can be appreciated and can help them enjoy their lives, but they're missing it. You know, the fans are dialed in. They get it. They know what's going on with the Galaxy Quest. That's wonderful, and it inspires them, and they're having fun. They're enjoying their lives. The actors are not, because they don't get it. And once they get it, once they're dialed into it and are attuned to what value is there, then they're happy. Then they're whole people by the end who can be generative, contributing people instead of just these pitiful has-beens. And yeah, I think that's a good message. That it applies to Star Trek, yeah, but it also applies to other things. That let's recognize what art does in our lives as essential.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, even cavemen had art.
Exactly. Yeah, it's what makes you a human being and not a robot that makes money, you know, and pushes buttons.
Yeah, I think about that all the time because my dad, he's always like, we drive through things and he's always saying things like, all of this stuff is not essential. We don't need it. We don't need it. We don't need it. And I'm like, I don't want to live in your world.
Yeah.
Or you have only the essential. That would be horrible. And I've long felt that I think that people that don't sort of at least minimally engage in movies, at least to a minimal extent, seeing your Star Wars, seeing your, you know, the big movies,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like are really actually sort of missing out on the storytelling device of our era. More than books, more, I think, even than TV, although TV's been a big thing, you know, in the last probably 10 years, more so as far as that goes. But, you know, you just look at the way that we have changed policy even to a certain extent because of what we've seen in movies and what messages have been shared, you know, and what have made people think in different ways, and just the different voices that we've heard, and the different ways, you know, that we can express. And I actually think it's really important to at least be somewhat versed in a modicum of cinema. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think whatever is the lingua franca of your culture, you need to be dialed into it, or you're missing out on a lot.
Yeah.
And I will say that I don't feel as exclusive about film as you do. I'm more of a literature guy, so I think literature is there too, and the traditional arts are there, and yeah, you need liberal arts. Now, you know, in the question of education, whether you need a liberal arts education, maybe you don't. If all you want is job training, go for it. If you want to appreciate it, though, you know, take the effort. You know, learn something about this stuff. And yeah, pop culture is good, but that's the bare skim surface. That's the sweet cream at the top, but there's so much more underneath. You know.
Yeah. I mean, you could just see so much in the. I did a blog when Force Awakens came out about why Star Wars is important,
Mm-hmm.
and
I'll have to look that up. That sounds good.
I talked about the even though like, a lot of people don't like the prequels, because a lot of people were like, why do people still like it when they didn't like 3 of the movies? Many didn't like 3 of the movies, and it's like because it's the world that we like. It's the characters that we like more than even, and so I could sit there with my brother and play Star Wars and create my own movie, create my own world, you know, and I think it's the same with Star Trek or with, you know, any of these things, is that you have created kind of, it's become part of your play. It's become
Mm-hmm.
part of you, who you are, in a way, because so that's why in a certain weird way you can tolerate a Star Trek 5, or you can tolerate you know, a Phantom Menace or whatever it might be, because it's really about just sort of the world of that you've been given, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. When I was a kid and I saw Star Trek 5, I was just happy to be there. I was just happy it was there.
Yeah.
You know, when I was, you know, and so this is a good wrap up, and especially on the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, this is a good kind of time to reflect on this. You know, Star Trek got me through some really difficult years.
Yeah.
When I was 11, I was hit by a car and was laid up. I missed half of seventh grade. I spent several months in an 80-pound cast on my back. And what did I do? I watched a lot of Star Trek. And because it was a world I could just get into and be safe and escape what had happened to me and the consequences of it. And I'll always be grateful for that escape hatch.
Yeah.
And what that meant to me. Now it does something else for me. It does more for me than just provide an escape. But at that time, I really needed that. And the years that followed were extremely difficult for other reasons too, and it got me through that too.
I can relate to that because when I tore my MCL in my knee, that's when I wouldn't be doing this podcast right now if it wasn't for honestly for Disney, because I tore my MCL. I was bedridden basically for about summer and where I couldn't really move on it at all. And so I decided to watch all the whole Disney canon and blog about it. And that blog turned into the YouTube channel. And actually, I ended up getting my job that I currently have because of my YouTube channel, because of things I learned.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and I ended up, you know, anyway, so it's true how, like, I don't know, how just something like that can actually be important in your life.
Yeah.
I can relate.
Yeah, but I was building models. I was pinning up, pinups from magazines of the characters all over my wall. I had ships hanging from my ceiling. You know, I was in it. I was that kid putting together the models and memorizing the specs of the ship that wasn't real, right? At one point, I even thought I wanted to be an engineer because I so desperately wanted to work with Geordi LaForge. You know, so yeah, it shaped my life, and I'll always be grateful for that.
So one of the things I love about the Lego movie is the way that it shows the merging in a child's mind of all of these worlds too.
Yeah.
You know, like you have the Millennium Falcon in there with Superman, and you have and you know, that's the way that children really work. That's the way that they play. And let's see, I think that's really, I don't know, it's really moving. And I think you can see that in the Brandon character here, you know, just the, like, how important this is for, you know, I don't know, for him in his life, you know, that it makes him feel smart that he can figure out Star Trek.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not hard to imagine him going on to design sets or write novels or, you know, do something amazing with his life because he was so captivated by this.
Yeah. Yeah, that post that I wrote, I said, it's a rare film that not only gives you a story, but also creates a whole new world. So while we may have seen sword fighting before, we hadn't seen lightsaber battles. We have seen the battle of good versus evil before, but never a force of light and darkness and a spiritual leadership known as the Jedi. The original Star Wars gave us new planets, characters, armor, and even the most humorous robots we'd seen in the movies. All of that combined to take a somewhat generic story into something that inspires imagination, creativity, and discussion. It's this immersive world that allowed Star Wars to still matter despite the prequels, because the love of Star Wars was never really about the story to begin with. So yeah. I think that you could say that for Star Trek as well. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what's at the heart of both is the feeling that's at the heart of both is a sense of wonder.
Yes.
I think that's the powerful, the real force, right? I think that's what draws people to this and what keeps them in it and what keeps them so enthusiastic about it is chasing that feeling, that space between understanding and not understanding something where you're elated that you don't know what you don't know. where you're on the cusp of discovering something amazing. And it's fun. I love that stories can do that for us, and we seem to always want to be chasing that. And if you're lucky enough to find that in your work or in your personal relationships, it's you're rich indeed, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. That's very, very, very profound, actually. I really. Um. Okay. Well, actually, we kind of covered a lot of my other questions. I was going to ask about what do you think they're trying to say with Sigourney Weaver's character about women in blockbusters? Do you have anything else to add to that about her, or do you kind of
Well,
cover
I
it?
think I think there's been some progress since Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, last year was a great year for women. You had Furiosa in
Mhm.
uh, in Mad Max. You had Rey in Force Awakens.
Yeah,
There were a number of roles like that that were given as lead roles. They weren't just sort of the receptionist or the person who repeats everything, kind of like she is in
yeah,
the movie.
yeah, yeah.
So
I'm curious to see what Netflix does with her character in the series that they're developing, because obviously, the character she played in Galaxy Quest was very limited and very stereotyped and objectified.
I didn't know
Whereas,
that. I didn't know this. What are they
oh
doing?
yeah, Netflix is developing a TV series based on Galaxy Quest. Yeah,
No way! I had no idea. I didn't
yeah.
know.
I don't know what casting they're doing. That's going to be key, but that's my understanding. Anyway, but my point though about her is that she is the actor is a person. She's a human being. She Sigourney Weaver and the writers do a good job making that character a three-dimensional human being. But the character she plays that character plays on Galaxy Quest is not.
Right.
She's a cardboard cutout next to a stack of beer cases at the convenience store. Like that's about all the depth she has. And so what they never get a chance to show or discuss is, okay, how do you reconcile this whole person with this really limited character and make something of it that's worth watching?
Yeah,
Because
especially.
that's what if the show's coming back in the conceit of the movie that Galaxy Quest is returning, who is this character now? What is she like?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, that because at the end of the movie they've started a whole new series, and what would her new role in the series be like? What would be all of this cast is now in the new show. That's sort of an interesting question. Like, what do we think the new show would be like?
Yeah,
Uh,
I think what they do effectively, all they really had to do though in the story was show that the actors understood why they were there and what they were doing, and relished it and enjoyed it. And that's all we needed to see.
yeah, that's true. Well, that'll be very interesting. I'll be very curious to see that show, what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, it won't be too. Their shows can be a little mature in content sometimes, so I hope
Yeah,
not. That's my only
I'd
worry, but
imagine that they'll keep it on about the same, at about the same level.
I would think so. They did that for the Full House, so not
Yeah,
always, not always. So
I think
yeah, I mean,
it's about consistency.
yeah. I mean, I still think we obviously have a ways to go because I think that the female characters that we have gotten have been great, but they've been put under such a microscope where if they were male characters, I don't think they would have been so much. And so I'm very curious because we had the nightmare that was the whole Ghostbusters snafu, and there were
Right.
problems on all sides, whatever. But I'm wondering if the next thing is this Ocean's 8,
Uh-huh.
the Ocean's 11 uh, reboot or sequel. It's not really it's a sequel, but all women.
Uh-huh.
And I'm curious now that I feel like we've kind of like I hope that we've kind of got that. I don't know, that's sort of been purged and now we're ready to kind of accept that, that like from now on, hopefully, I hope that this next thing will be more handled better by all involved and better received. And anyway,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I really recommend that you take a look at a fan produced episode of Star Trek that just came out. It's called "Embracing the Winds" by Star Trek Continues. And the conceit of Star Trek Continues is that what if the original series had not been canceled? What if it had gone on to have a fourth season?
Mm-hmm.
And it's extremely well done. Like, I cannot emphasize enough how spot on the dialogue and the lighting and the production and values are in matching up with that old show. But I wouldn't bring it up except to point out that how the discussion of where does discrimination end and begin? Where does special treatment become, or how does the discrimination merge into special treatment and reparations and all that stuff, especially in terms of sexism and gender relationships?
Mm-hmm.
That this episode of Star Trek Continues faces that head on, and I think you'll get a lot out of it. I've put the link in the chat window.
Cool. And I will put that in the description section also.
Yeah.
I've got it, so that'll be really good. Well, I mean, we kind of went through all my questions. Did you have any other parts that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we put it well. Oh, no. Okay, I've changed my answer about the jokes.
Oh, yeah?
By Grapthar's Hammer. What a savings. There's no way I can do it justice, but like, that is something my wife and I still throw that around. Like, if we see a low price on something, we go, by Grapthar's Hammer. What a savings.
And I'm sure that there are Star Trek people at car shows and stuff like that, like Live Long and Prosper or whatever. I know that, like,
maybe in the 70s they did that, but not anymore. Not
anymore. You don't think?
No.
Even the hard up people. You don't?
Yeah,
think?
no. I think it's either you're a rock star at the conventions or you're in jail, and that's there's very little room in between.
Interesting. Okay. Because I know, like, with Survivor, because I'm a big Survivor fan, like, the contestants are they can't, like, use any of the branding or all they can say is that I'm a reality star, kind of a thing. So I don't know if that's true with other shows, but.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think they certainly can't show up in uniform. I know that's at least independently. Like yeah.
My crap, Sar's Hammer. It was. I just loved when he was like, "I'm not saying it. I'm not going to say it. I'm not." I love Alan Rickman so much. I'm so sad.
Yeah, he does a beautiful job in this.
Because that's the thing. Like, I read that they were considering doing a trilogy on Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Just like, that's a horrible idea. That book is not trilogy worthy, and you just can't without Snape. Like, there's no other. Like, because you know how you talk to people who are like, Tom Hanks is the new Jimmy Stewart, or you'll hear people say things like that, and it's like, there is no new Alan Rickman. Like, he's just a one of a kind.
Yeah, it's like, is anybody talking about a new Groucho Marx? I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, he's it.
I heard somebody say that about Yul Brynner, and so there is no new Yul Brynner. Like, he was just a unique guy.
That's right.
There's new Clark Gables, there's new, like, Cary Grants, like, people like that.
I think what people are trying to say is that someone is filling this kind of occupying this sort of region of the popular imagination. Like, Tom Hanks is the Jimmy Stewart in this new Jimmy Stewart in the sense that he's the box office everyman. He's right. We can all relate to him. He seems like our nice next door neighbor kind of thing. Right, or if you say someone, you could argue that Brad Pitt occupies the same space that Clark Gable once occupied.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That sort of a sex symbol, but also lots of acting chops and all that stuff. So.
And there's just no no new Alan Rickman, in my opinion.
Right.
He was a
Yeah.
one of a kind. So I guess the closest you'd get is like a Jason Statham, but that's not very close.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, this has been so fun. I can't believe
Yeah.
that we're done. Holy cow. This is crazy. So next week we are going to do our last Star Trek-ish podcast until the Discovery and premiere pilot that we'll do, and we are going to rank all 14 films. So this is going to be very similar.
I'll start working on the list.
Yeah. So this will be similar to what we did with what I did with Jeremy and Abby for ranking the Star Wars movies, and it was a lot of fun. So, so that will be fun next week. But where can people find you?
On Twitter at Elmano Roboto, and on the web at tgunwriter.com.
Great. And I'll have that in the description section. And yeah, this has just been so much fun. This has been
I agree.
Really great. I'm glad that we did it, and thank you so much for all your time and effort.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been a blast, and I appreciate Trek more than I ever have.
Oh, good. I'm glad. So, all right. Well, we will be together next week then.
Yep. Okay. See ya.